Welcome to As Long as the River Flows, a Keepers of the Water podcast. Episode 33 is part 2 of a 4-part series on the criminalization of Indigenous land defenders in Canada. Our Truth. In part 2, we hear from Sleydo and Jesse Cardinal. We start off with Sleydo, who is a spokesperson for the Gidimt'en checkpoint on Wet'suwet'en territory. She's been living on and occupying the territory since 2014 with her children. Gidimt'en checkpoint has been an Indigenous reoccupation site since 2018, which has been raided 3 times by militarized RCMP. Once on January 7, 2019, again on February 5, 2020, and then again on November 18th and 19th, 2021, all as a result of grassroots resistance to the Coastal Gaslink pipeline project, which would bring frack gas from northeastern BC to an LNG terminal near Gidimt'en. Sleydo has a master's degree in Indigenous governance from the University of Victoria and is heavily involved in the Wet'suwet'en clan governance system.
Denise Tsakaize Skaize Sai Sleydo Sydney Gidimt'en Hesley Wet'suwet'en Istan. My name's Sleydo. My English name's Molly Wickham, and I hold the name in Cas Yikh House, which is the grizzly bear house of the Wet'suwet'en Nation of the Gidimt'en clan. And I'm really excited to be here and so honored to be speaking with all of these people who I adore. And thank you so much to everybody who organized this webinar today. I just want to really comment a little bit on what just saying too about the Delgamuukw court case and our Nuknu'ten. Our Nuknu'ten is our laws, our body of laws. And when I first moved home, I had been away in university for a number of years. I grew up displaced from my community because my mother was a victim of the 60s scoop. And so I didn't grow up, even though I grew up on Wet'suwet'en territory, I didn't grow up with all of the teachings that a lot of people did. And so when I first moved back home, I started spending time working on some clan meetings back in 2009. And at that time, the treaty negotiators for the Wet'suwet'en were hosting all clans meetings and were hosting clan meetings. And so I attended many Gidimt'en clan meetings about the treaty. And one of the main things that I took away was a really good description and a really good understanding of the Delgamuukw court case and the fact that the courts can only bring us so far. And then we actually have to start living it. We actually have to start enacting it. And when we talk about, what did the courts, that the courts in the Delgamuukw court case and title is like, they don't know what title looks like. Nobody else knows what title looks like except for the Indigenous people who have title. And that's going to look different. So there's not one cookie cutter piece. And that's something that I think that I really took to heart when I moved home. And that was being shown to me by other Wet'suwet'en people like Hawalkat, like Frida and Smogogam, and people that were actually just living it. They're like, we just need to do it. Nobody's going to give it to us. Nobody's going to tell us how to have title. Nobody can. We have to follow our Nuknu'ten, and we actually just have to start enacting and implementing our title. We have to act like we have it because we do, and we actually have to just live it. And so I think when we're talking about criminalization, that is the repression of us enacting our title and our laws. And that is exactly what I have experienced over the last decade of first supporting Unistoten and their reoccupation of the territory and their resistance to pipelines, and then experiencing it more intensely firsthand myself after Gidimt'en also started to reoccupy and set up the first blockades in 2018. I think that this is a really important way to think about criminalization. And from my firsthand experience, this is exactly why we are seeing militarized repression of Indigenous people. And, I think sometimes I struggle with the word, land defender or water protector. I think those are definitely things that we do. Obviously, that's built into our Nuknu'ten, that's built into our laws. and our governance structures. But I think for any Indigenous person who's protecting their own land, it's just who you are. It's just part of your responsibility. And, I lifted the name Sleydo in 2019, in March of 2019, which just happened to be after the first blockade, but it had nothing to do with the blockade. This was decided long before that ever happened. But that's when I lifted the name. And so my responsibility intensified. And I really learned and had been groomed to understand what my responsibility was as somebody who held a name in Gidimt'en clan to the land and to the water. And so I think when we are criminalized as land defenders or criminalized as water protectors, we're being actually criminalized for being Wet'suwet'en. We're being criminalized for just being who we are. When we think about it like that, it becomes really serious. And it's serious because being who we are means that we are protecting our land, that we're implementing our title. Sometimes I struggle with this idea of, being in the court system and being on either side. So it's like people are using the court systems in lots of really good ways to help their communities and to protect their lands. And the way that I'm experiencing the court system is that this is meant to be a deterrent. As soon as we step into a colonial court, we are put in a box. We're either a criminal or we're not a criminal. We don't get to just be who we are. It doesn't matter that we are Wet'suwet'en. It doesn't matter that we're Gidimt'en. It doesn't matter who we are as Indigenous people. And the courts don't and cannot take that into consideration. And we've seen that with our own cases with Chief Sahel, where they made that argument that he is a hereditary chief. He is supposed to be taking care of the land. He's a caretaker of the land. And the judge ruled that there's just not room for Wet'suwet'en law and colonial law. So I think that it's being in that position has been quite an experience to know that there is no winning, even if we win, and I know that, our team, Francis and the rest of our team have worked extremely hard to keep us out of jail. And when I've talked to our lawyers and when I talk to other lawyers, I talk about this is what your job is. We're going to uphold our law. We're going to uphold our responsibility. We're going to enact Anaknu'ten on our territories. And your job is to be the buffer. Your job is to keep us out of jail and keep them away from us so that we can just be who we are and live out our responsibilities. And I think that we've experienced so much, and I hope that maybe Shay might talk more about the Kurg and the crew, but this, for people who don't understand, is really at the heart of colonization. This is a real representation of current day colonization and genocide from the state and of this type and this level of repression from a paramilitary group who has unlimited funding, who has, they get to act with impunity at all times when they're dealing with Wet'suwet'en people, when they're dealing with Indigenous people. And the Gidimt'en people, our closest allies, neighbors, and family members are about to experience the exact same thing that we've gone through for the last decade because of the proposed pipelines through their territories. One of the reasons why we fought so hard and why we brought the abusive process against the RCMP is because they have acted so violently towards us. They have acted just with impunity. They act and they know that they can just do whatever they want to us. They have become very, very violent over the years, an increasing level of violence. And we know that that's going to affect other people, other Indigenous people. And that we know that that will continue to affect us. And we have been living with the consequences, of year after year after year of violence, intimidation, harassment, to the point where our people have limited access to the territories, where private security who act like RCMP also block us from the territories, threaten arrest. We've had so many arbitrary detentions. There's just been I think over 75 arrests within the last 5 years in our territories. And so we're looking at extreme repression from the state who is just handed over the keys to dealing with Indigenous people when it comes to private industry. They are only there. They're specifically designed to protect private industry. And so when we look at the history of colonial laws and who was deemed criminal, our most sacred healers in the past, our house chiefs, were sent off to mental institutions and never seen again because of their powers. That was a crime, to be spiritually powerful. Our people were jailed for practicing our governance system and the potlatch system. They went to jail and they still did it. They were criminalized for it. All of the criminalization has always just been a repression of us and who we are and acting out who we are as Indigenous people. And so this is meant to be a deterrence. And I say, Jesse actually gave me this, had a good talk with me one day at court and just said, this is a celebration. Let's celebrate. We're not criminals. We are amazing Indigenous people who have Gidimt'en behind us, who have our ancestors behind us, who have all of the ways of being that we know inherently that we have a right and responsibility to. And let's celebrate that despite what comes, despite whatever repressive tactics they use next and continue to use. We're going to continue to celebrate who we are and the fact that we are upholding our responsibility as Indigenous people. Awitsa, Masai.
Hi, segue, everybody. Put out the segues. That was just what we needed to hear. Sleydo, is there's the two sides of it, right? There's what the colonizers are doing. That's them. That's who they are. They are the violence. They are the oppression. They are the shame. That's not for us to carry. So even like the reserve systems, the pass system, like that just goes on to what you were talking about, where you could be arrested if you left these small plots of reserve land. But now we have these lands that were set aside called traditional territories. Under colonial, they call it crown land. That's exactly what people need to do. Go back to the land. Not to the small reserves, go back to the land. What's known as crown land is Indigenous traditional territory. Your community has traditional territory. You have a right to be there. You have a right to be living there, occupying there, hunting, fishing, harvesting, all of these things. And then we talk about the criminalization of this is the only solution that the colonial government has, and it's getting more violent. But we look back, and I think of one case because I did a bit of research on criminalization of Indigenous land defenders or just Indigenous people. I want to highlight the Paulette case or the Berger inquiry. And that was back in the 70s, I think. Francois Paulette, he's on our Elders Wisdom Council. Many of you know him. He helped to lead this. He was the chief at the time, and they wanted to put the Mackenzie pipeline through all of Northwest Territories. And what the federal government did at that time was they called for a national inquiry. That to me is a model that Canada can adopt rather than let's just send out our goons and go beat everybody up and forcefully remove them from their own lands. What the Berger inquiry was Thomas Berger was put in charge of it. And he went to all of these communities. And I talked to Francois. He said this guy would even go to people's houses. He had to have translators, of telling them about what was being proposed and how did they feel about it? How would it impact them? In the end, that pipeline didn't get built. Why? Because the people didn't want it. And so that's what we need to come to terms with, is that no is an answer, and that needs to be respected.
That was Jessie Cardinal. Thank you for listening. Jessie Cardinal is the Executive Director of Keepers of the Water. In this role, she has challenged the disparities between Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations and created a more just environment for their work. To find out more about Keepers of the Water or to help the cause, visit our website at keepersofthewater.ca. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to be the first to hear new episodes, and follow us on social media on Facebook, or subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content. Miigwech.